Welcome to the FNO InsureTech Podcast, your home for all things InsureTech. Here are your hosts, Lee Boyd, Rob Beller, and David Prejeant.
Hey, podcast world. Welcome to a really interesting edition of your favorite podcast and mine, FNO InsureTech, the podcast that covers it all in the world of InsureTech. And I think we've done it again today. Usually we spend the first few minutes of the introduction kind of just BSing around about this and that. But today we're skipping that because we just finished our interview. And I want you to know that I'm like all lit up from our guest today and what he had to talk about. We have with us today, ready for this? Are you ready for this, David?
I'm ready. You're glowing. Rob is glowing right now. So that's how excited he is.
I'm glowing. I'm glowing for two reasons. One is we have David Prejeant with us today, who is our other co-host, one of the three. And also I'm all excited that Lee Boyd is not here because everybody knows.
I can't say that. You can say that.
Lee wants all the attention and he's not going to get it today.
Attention today goes to our guest.
I want everyone's attention who listen to this podcast because you're about to hear a fabulous podcast.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's probably the greatest podcast ever recorded. That's just me.
I think that makes a lot of sense, but no, I don't want to make light of it. We have with us today Alex Schmelkin, who is the founder and CEO of Sixfold. And for those of you who've heard of Sixfold, you understand a lot about the waves they're making and what they're up to. And those of you who don't know Sixfold, you have to listen to this podcast.
Yes, absolutely. Alex was phenomenal. Not to be silly about it, he gave us some of his time and absolutely wonderful insight into the world of underwriting, wonderful insight into the world of AI, wonderful insight into how technology and programming and software has evolved since the early 2000s. If you normally would not listen to any more of the podcast, you should change your mind today and absolutely listen to what Alex has to say.
In particular, if you're interested to know what's happening in underwriting, how is AI affecting underwriting, and the excitement around those ideas and those new realities that are happening, you got to listen to this. And I'll just say one particular, Astrid, you got to listen to this one. I know you'll love it. So that's just a shout out to Astrid.
Alex and Sixfold are not talking about AI. Alex and Sixfold are underwriting AI. They are doing it. It is implemented. It is working. It is a fully functioning machine that they have over there.
Yeah. So we are going to stop jibber jabbering and start having you listen to our interview with Alex Schmelkin, the founder and CEO of Sixfold. Hey, everybody. We have with us today a interesting guest, a special guest, Alex Schmelkin from Sixfold, a company you might have heard of or you're going to hear of. Those are the two choices you have. And we'll just jump right in. Welcome to FNO InsureTech.
Thank you. Happy to be here to chat.
Great. Where are you today? Where do we find you today?
I'm currently in New York in our Manhattan office.
Very nice.
Just north of Union Square, enjoying a pretty humid and not so nice day here, but it's okay.
So it's officially summer in the city.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be there in about a month, so please change the weather appropriately.
We will. We'll try to make it a little crisper for you when you visit.
I would appreciate that. I really would. Anyways, let's jump right in and ask you to tell us, what is Sixfold? What do you guys do for the industry?
Sixfold is an AI underwriting company. We exist for one reason, and we do one thing. That is to create an AI underwriter that's used by large insurance companies around the world to help make their underwriting operations more accurate, more effective, more profitable, and also more fun. We essentially are used by line underwriters and their managers to improve the processing of new applications when people apply for insurance. And we use AI to make underwriters smarter, better, faster, and to create a colleague that works alongside them to make their jobs more effective.
You've been bouncing around the insurance industry for a while, right?
I call myself an insurance nerd. I
Okay.
started in less fun pursuits and find myself here now for almost 20 years and absolutely love it.
I have to ask you because you guys are about 3 years old, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Which in AI years is an eternity. Tell us the origin story if you could.
It was coming out of my last startup where I was also a founder, part of the founding team. And it's the summer of 2022, which is a special time in the arc of AI because it was pre-ChatGPT. It was pre that moment when the rest of the world, not just tech nerds and insurance nerds, woke up to the presence of LLMs and GPTs and the like. And it was the summer of 22, and I purposefully left my last company and I was figuring out what to do next. And probably the best advice I was given by friends who had taken a self-imposed sabbatical in their career was be purposeful about your time and try to figure out what you're going to do next. And so my purpose was to start just playing with the LLM models that you had access to, but I wasn't doing anything in insurance. I was trying to take a break from InsureTech, which I've done now for most of my career. So I started building little bots that would hang out in discussion forums during a Phish show, during like a live concert, or build bots to automate other things in my life. And I would do this and have fun, but obviously my mind eventually turned to, you should probably figure out something productive to do with this amazing new technology, which you're playing around with. And because I'm an insurance nerd and I've spent most of my career in InsureTech and in underwriting and in the boundary between brokers and underwriting teams, my mind just turned to underwriting as the single best place to take an LLM, to take generative AI in order to have the biggest impact. So I became pot committed. I got excited about the idea and just jumped right in.
It seems like a great fit for AI underwriting. Have you found that to be the case?
Yeah, it absolutely is, but it was difficult in the beginning. I'll explain. So pre-ChatGPT, as the idea for the business was forming, we were in a mode as I was getting this off the ground that I had to explain to people what AI is, how is it different than machine learning, and what's a GPT and all of that. And those were annoying and painful discussions, but you had to do them. And then this magical thing happened in the end of 22 when ChatGPT came out, right at the time that we were committing to this business. So then all the conversations we started having in 2023 when we officially formed, we didn't have to explain to execs anymore what we were up to, but they were still skeptical that it could work for underwriting. It's hard to remember the early days when it was going to be used for marketing and maybe a little bit of service and for chat type things. But no, we were saying, actually, you can use this to analyze risk, to be a better assistant for you, to do exhaustive online research, to help you to understand your manual at depth that you can't today. But it took a few cycles that eventually you build a great product and you could convince the industry just through the results you get.
I mean, I think Woody Allen said that 80% of life is timing, or somebody said that. And do you feel fortuitous that the timing of it all kind of came together? Because ChatGPT opened doors and shined a light that was incredible.
This mandate got written overnight. And it happened to be the exact time that we said, oh, we're going to build the first AI underwriting company. And so timing's a funny thing. You've got to answer it when it's there. I didn't time this business knowing that ChatGPT was going to come out and that the world would go through this AI explosion. But we were in the right place at the unique time when suddenly every board and every executive was saying, what's my AI strategy? And what are the AI things that I need to start playing around with? So we answered that bell. And the other cool part is early on, we said, we're going to do one thing. It was actually, some people were saying that's a pretty radical thing. Like AI is so expansive. Why don't you just do all of insurance, whatever that means, and go deep in every area? And we said, just my experience told me, specialization is what's going to be absolutely key in AI. How could a tiny startup, it was just the three of us, it's three co-founders. How could we do everything? So we picked one thing, the most important thing, the $7 trillion asset class. But that's been consistent since the beginning.
I've seen various statistics about the improvements that have come for your customers as a result of using the product. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we're on a journey from our customers immediately, like in the very early days of using an underwriting AI, seeing efficiency and expense ratio improvements. So that's where you start. People are able to turn around quotes in half the time. Our customers publish, they say, I saved 2 hours on this submission, or a life insurer said, it takes me 50% of the time to look at a 10 or a 20-hour life complex case. So you start there and you immediately attack the time savings. But time savings doesn't get you anywhere with the CFO. The CFO is looking at the cost of Sixfold and saying, well, what impact you're actually having? So we move on to premium per underwriter. And the idea is you have to prove that with the time savings, something's happening. Are you writing more business? Yes. Are you writing more accurately? Yes. So we go along this continuum, and eventually you get to loss ratio. Now, harder to prove on a 3-year business. We're going to have to get a few more cycles of this, but eventually, and we're starting to get early indications that we're not just writing business more effectively and more efficiently, we're writing more profitable business. And that's the ultimate goal that we're striving for.
Right. And that in our industry, that's not proved in a day or a month, right?
Yeah.
You have to see performance over years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, losses can take years to show up, even in this year's current book. We need to develop an early indicator, and we've got a good one. So I know that your losses will be at least as good, if not a little better than they are today, if I can prove that I'm writing more accurately to your guidelines. So, you've got a team of, let's say, 100 underwriters out there, and they're each reading the manual and interpreting it to their own, to their own opinions and biases and training. And that's not a problem because most underwriting shops are profitable, but you still got 100 different people doing your underwriting. Well, now enter an AI like mine. We can prove that we're underwriting precisely to the standards that your chief underwriter or your actuaries have set out. So that's the early indicator. Audit what kind of output we're putting out, and then say, am I writing the business I want to? And then, of course, we're all placing a little bit of a medium-term bet that we're going to start seeing that showing up in just better loss experience.
Is it just time savings and, clerical help, or are you really making a difference? Because you'll hear people say that underwriting it's a feel, it's a touch. I can look at all the data, which is important, but yes or no requires me to make that decision.
Yeah. Let me unpack it in 2 ways. The first is what the underwriters immediately feel is this exhilaration that the model, that the AI, that the agent that we've created can do things that used to take them inordinate amounts of time. Just yesterday, oh my God, Sixfold did in 3 minutes what used to take me an hour. An underwriter said that. We love that when we get that kind of feedback. And it starts there. People's immediate reaction is, wow, you're doing for me something that used to take me hours, and then you get it done in minutes. And that's the original way that we think about the impact. But then it gets deeper to the second part of your question, Rob. What we've also learned is there are certain things that an AI underwriter are better at than humans. Let me describe them. We're better at doing an expansive online scan of a business if I'm underwriting it to try to find every single thing that's ever been published about them. We're better at memorizing your entire book of business, every policy you've ever written, and not just you, all of your peers. And AI is better at memorizing your guidelines. And the list goes on and on. But now to your question of that feel, that art. You know what an AI is terrible at? Taking gambles, making bets, figuring out an outcome for something that it has not yet seen. And that's still about 20% of what an underwriter sees every year. And so leave the mechanical work to the AI to do the things that actually it's probably doing better, but then leave that taste making and that art. And frankly, the gambling that underwriters have to take with the capital, leave that to the underwriter. And that's where the best marriage of AI and human come in.
Right. That's so interesting because I'm sure when you went, because of the timing that we were talking about, when you started with some of these potential customers and you were going through it, there was probably a reasonable amount of resistance to stepping on underwriters' toes. That's stuff that you can't do, that can only be done by a human. But as we talked in the beginning, that underwriting is a perfect home for AI because it's about accumulating a data file, right? And making a decision.
A couple of funny things happened along the way. At least people are not talking about the AIs coming for my job. That conversation has changed. In the beginning, that was the conversation. And now everyone is following what's become trite question of how are the humans or underwriters of the future going to be better working with AI? So we're there. But we also learned all the ways to piss off underwriters with AI. And the number one way you piss off an underwriter with AI is you have them put something into your system and you produce an output, and then you ask the underwriter, hey, is this good or bad? And the underwriter just looks right at you and they're like, that's not my job to tell you. I'm here to get insights and to have you do work for me. And, part of it is obviously a partnership because a big part of our trick is the underwriter tells us constantly, what are we doing good and what are we doing bad? But man, we learned that lesson hard. We have to show up with a very strong opinion of this is really good output. Otherwise, you can turn some underwriters off pretty quickly.
Yeah, I believe that the dance, and we see that in claims too, the dance between AI and claims automation is probably fairly similar to the dance between hands-on underwriting and AI automated underwriting. Everybody's got an opinion on it. You mentioned, I'm curious about this. This really got my attention. You mentioned one of the things that you guys work on at Sixfold is making underwriting more fun. And so I'm curious, how does one make underwriting more fun?
It's another thing we discovered very early. We try to take a human-centered approach to this because that's the right thing and the smart thing to do in software design. Underwriters' jobs, most of the day, they're not underwriting. At least today, pre-AI, they're doing clerical work. They're sifting through emails. They're nervous that they're going to miss a detail, and they're ping-ponging here and there. That work is not fun. What's fun for underwriters is taking a gamble, placing a bet. There's a dopamine rush of saying, wow, I'm going to press the button and offer this quote to someone and win the business. And those are the things that underwriters want to do, but the clerical stuff and the administrative stuff is really a burden. We just put out a survey asking a lot of different executives about the future of underwriting and AI and everything. And underwriters themselves said they are more prone to take a job if that job is going to enable them with AI. And back to the earlier question, it's like opposite. They're not afraid that AI is going to take their job away. They realize they are going to have a more enjoyable time. And that's how we preserve the funderwriting, as we call it, David.
Love it. I love it. You have an interesting background, Alex. You are an insurance nerd now by your own admission, and with Light Company here on the InsureTech podcast. But you weren't born in insurance, for lack of a better word. You worked your way here through a couple of different startups that you mentioned. And so what does that path look like? You spent some time at some companies that were focused on customer service, which that's always part of the discussion. You spent some time at a company prior where you were working on no code development. How does that journey look from, back in the early to mid 2000s, 2010s to where we are now with Sixfold? And what did you pick up along the way that when you guys started with this Sixfold operation, you said, hey, we learned this lesson before. Let's make sure we get this right on the front end.
Yeah, I've had fun along the way. And now I've landed, at least for the last, 18, almost 20 years, in the most fun part of my career. I started in what I'm required by my current group to call the boring part of my career in fashion, luxury and e-commerce. We used to design swimsuit websites and work for consumer brands. And I was a web kid, like a late 90s web kid, self-taught, knew how to build websites when like that was the magic back in the day. And I started a business right in college, and we pivoted that into something that, was early website design, and we got acquired. And what I loved about that era is we were inventing things and coding, and like no one knew how any of this stuff worked. And because eventually my second company figured out how to design and build really cool e-commerce sites, we started getting hired by some of the biggest brands in the world. And this was in an era before these companies brought e-commerce development and design in-house. And so what that taught me was user experience and as well as security needed for e-commerce, pleasing end customers, but making transactions really fast and making transactions fun. We used to say that back in the day, like e-commerce shopping should be fun. One day in like the mid 2000s, like 2007, 2008, my company then, we get an inbound phone call from someone very senior at Citigroup. And this guy he emails, but eventually he's on the phone and he said, "Hey, hello, I'm from Citigroup. We want to build a massive e-commerce site. And we found your firm, and we love all the consumer stuff you do. Do you think you could find banking cool?" And I'm like, "Sure. Well, we've never done banking, but I'm totally willing to try." And that same person, many years later, became the global CIO of MetLife, the insurance company. And I got a very similar call saying, "If you thought banking was cool, let me introduce you to the insurance industry." And that's how you connect fashion and luxury and e-commerce to banking to insurance. And then once you find your home, you never leave. And the rest is history.
That's awesome. When was that? Around when was that?
So that all started in the early 2000s into the very short-lived banking in the 2007, 2008 era. And then by 8 or 9, and then into 10, started pivoting into insurance exclusively.
So at this point, you've done some cool stuff. You've had a ton of fun in the banking world. You've made underwriting fun again. And I think that dopamine rush is that gamble, that piece of the puzzle where you actually get to make the decision and then ultimately see how it plays out. We touched a little bit on that data starting to come in on how these decisions are playing out. You guys, I'm assuming, are feeding some measure of data back to your clients. What is that starting to look like? I don't want to say predict the future, because the future of AI, I mean, you could tell it could be completely different tomorrow, or it could be completely different later on this afternoon, with the speed at which things are changing. So what is that future of the data as you guys start to collect it and then filter it back in? How do you leverage that? What does that change about what you guys are doing?
A CEO of one of our very active customers said something to me a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago now. He said, "I run a very successful underwriting shop. This guy's got a lot of underwriters, a lot of premium. It's a very successful business." And he said, "But you know what? I can't really tell you why we're successful. Sure, as CEO, I give the answer. I have the best underwriters. I have the best product. I have the best distribution relationships. I have the best internal controls." And the list goes on and on. But he says, actually on the ground, no one can ever give me the answer. Well, why? Why are we the best underwriters? What are they actually doing? And so that put us on a journey, which we started after we built our original AI models, David, to answer that question, to say, what's actually going on under the hood when an underwriter is making a go, no-go decision or a pricing decision? And so we developed this entire suite of portfolio and distribution analytics, which answers the question. And it's able to now tell a CEO, well, here's precisely why. Because 30% of the risks that you're taking, let's say it's cyber, I'll make it up. Let's say you're writing cyber insurance. 30% of the risks that you take in cyber insurance have this precise makeup of the end customer stores records this way, and they have multi-factor authentication, and they have these procedures, blah, blah. And 30% looks like this, and 20% looks like that. And then all of a sudden, the CEO and chief underwriter is able to look at the data, David, and say, oh, that makes sense. That's why we are successful. Because a lot of times, the book that you wind up with is a little bit different than the book that you dream of in your guidelines. And so the fact that we're able to provide those data insights alongside the AI helping our customers to make their decisions is another reason why we think ultimately over time, our approach is going to be winning.
I want to talk about your approach over time. And, and one of the things that you hear frequently when we talk about AI is the displacement of people. And none of us know fully yet how true that is going to be or not. Share your thoughts with that. I mean, does your product give an underwriter a package that says, here's all the information in the data, and based on everything I know, this is what you should do. This is what I recommend. Is it that far along? And what is the long-term outlook for people?
Where we started, Rob, is we were a friendly insurance underwriting co-pilot and assistant. Cool terms to use 3 years ago now. You can't use them now, obviously. They're very tired. And we also needed to ease our way in. So where we started, we would tell an underwriter, I'm going to do the best, most thorough analysis for you of everything I can find. I'm going to be your assistant friend over here. I'm going to bring you back information that you could take action on. And that was our very first product. No one had it. We created it, and our insurance customers started gobbling it up. Quickly, though, what that product evolved into was our customers started saying, okay, great. Now you're bringing me the right information, but can you take some actions for me? One of the most annoying things I have to do is I have to write a referral email. If something is a little bit out of my authority, I've got to write an email to my boss saying, hey, can I do this? And I justify it. So we said, yeah, sure. Well, we can actually do that for you. So I'm not just going to bring you the information. And now fast forward another couple of years of R&D, and we have a complete end-to-end AI underwriter. So think of it like a colleague. It can analyze the risk. It could provide the full risk summary as needed back to the underwriter. And when it's given the right authority, it can take a submission all the way to bind. And some of our customers do it. They say, hey, if this is a really bad risk, I'm going to let you auto reject it. If it's a really good risk, which by the way, everyone wants, so it's highly competitive on the price, I'm going to let you bring it all the way to bind with proper human control. If it's a iffy risk where you can make a lot of money if you price this right, I'm going to keep the humans super involved. And we're going to play a little game of the AI does this and the human does that. But it really comes down now to how do our customers want to configure it? And that's the way that they're using this AI underwriter colleague.
So, because I would think like with, certain embedded plays and whatnot that need to be underwritten, but they're very, very, very high volume. Like I have no idea what that would be, but I'm thinking about cell phones, people losing their cell phones or destroying their cell phones or whatever, where there's tons and tons of claims coming through on those all the time. That automated underwriting, AI underwriting would make practical sense.
Completely. And I'll even bring up another example. Things like that you just described, it actually comes down more to math. That's actuarial science. It's like you look at the population of the last year, who's losing their cell phones, what screens are cracking. It's actually pretty straightforward to not even use AI. You could use math, a little bit of machine learning, a little bit of good old fashioned stats. You could come up with some very good underwriting. But where you can't do that is on a small business in the UK that's applying for general liability, workers' compensation, property, and all the other coverages they need. But they're a small company and they do 2 million pounds of revenue a year. Yet you still need to underwrite them and you need to check all of the boxes. You got to look up the owners. You got to look at their past claims. You got to look at their property damage, blah, blah, blah. And that's nearly impossible to do just with numbers. You actually have to do a deep underwriting, yet the policy is only going to be £1,000 a year. It's never worth the squeeze to have a human do all that work. So sometimes those books aren't as profitable as they can be. That's a perfect scale play. Now you could say, hey, I could give you a really accurate quote for tens of thousands of these a week. And that's the area where at scale, we're being used for automated underwriting.
Is that a product that you're involved in, or are you strictly commercial?
So we do two types of insurance. We do commercial or business insurance, specialty insurance, spanning SME all the way to the biggest corporate, like truly from the tiniest policies all the way to the biggest. And that's about 70% of our business today. And the balance is life and disability, L&H insurance, which is trailing our P&C offering by about a year. So we're a little bit still in growth mode there. But those are the two areas we focus.
So Alex, obviously we talked a lot about how the AI underwriter is becoming more and more prevalent. They're becoming more and more embedded. They're becoming more and more a part of day-to-day underwriting. What do you think the role of the underwriter as a human looks like in 3 years? Where do you think that sits with the scale at which everything is growing?
Yeah, underwriters, I suspect, to the extent we could predict the future, underwriters are going to become the portfolio managers that we've dreamed that we've want them to be for the past decade. So our prediction here, and we're going to make this happen, is that an underwriter is going to be able to employ so many AI colleagues to go out and do a lot of the background work on underwriting. The 80% of cases, David, that all kind of look the same, that feel the same, probably the human underwriter is going to get comfortable to allow the AI underwriter to bring them all the way to quote or binds. And then for those cases that every year are going to be a new gamble, a new bet, something they haven't seen, which is going to come up every year. It's never going to stop because there's always going to be a new earthquake or a new catastrophe or a new medication or a new disease. That's going to be the domain where the underwriters are still having fun. They're still getting that dopamine rush. And I see them basically acting as a overlord of their entire portfolio, shaping it and having just, vastly more capacity than they do today. What we need to solve for, I'll share one more thing. We still haven't fully solved how they're going to interface with the underwriting AI. I'll tell you what it's not. It's not an underwriting workbench. It's not a CRM system. It's probably not their inbox, although that's not a bad plate. It's probably something like Slack. It's probably something like Teams, some sort of Cockpit. No one's solved that. We've got great ideas and our customers love it, but we've got a ways to go to create the cockpit of the future for the underwriter to actually have control over this domain.
Yeah, I do wonder that. You mentioned Slack. It's got some interesting integrations there, and it's doing some interesting stuff from a managing your desk standpoint. I would like to be the overlord of an underwriting portfolio. I was just thinking about that when you mentioned it. I would love that to be my title, as underwriting overlord. So just stick that in your that's a good one. You could put that on a t-shirt. And you touched on this. That's what I was going to ask you is what is the future of Sixfold look like now? What is, you guys, I'm not going to say you've mastered underwriting because I don't think it's something that you master, but you got a pretty good handle on it. You got a pretty good handle on the AI underwriter. Where does, obviously you're not going to give me you're not going to crack open the cookbook, but what is Sixfold, and maybe even Alex more so, thinking about for the next wave? Is it that digital dashboard? Is it solving for what that cockpit of the future looks like? I just hope that it's curved and, it's got a curved screen and it curves around me so I can look all around and see it.
Somehow all encompassing and holography in 3D, of course.
Yes.
It's a few big bets over the next couple of years. And anyone that does AI as a true practitioner can tell you, I kind of know what I'm doing today. I kind of have a vision maybe for a couple of years from now, but everything in between is going to change radically. There's no medium-term plans in AI.
1,000%.
Yeah, here's the big bets that I think we're going to place. We are going to solve and be the leader in how insurance professionals and underwriters and their bosses and the actuaries and everyone around them interfaces with AI. There's some interesting models in the way it's working right now, and our customers are efficient and having fun, but we know that we've yet to create this environment where they could be the overlord. And, short example here is if you guys have ever played with the @Claude tag, which you can use in Slack or you could deploy it anywhere. This thing spread like wildfire through my company, which Anthropic loves because Claude now just lives in our Slack and it has access to everything. But now all of a sudden, all my guys are asking Claude things left and right, and the tokens are racking up, and there's downsides of that. But Claude just shows up. And so Sixfold has to show up. Anywhere there's underwriting, claims processing, Sixfold goes up. So that's one big bet. Another big bet is that the technology we have, which is able to figure out, is this a good risk or a bad risk or why, can live outside of the core areas of insurance that we do today. What we've really created is an AI agent that understands risk at a fundamental level. And there's lots of different kind of risk taken around the world. And I think what we're doing is earning the right to peek around the corner eventually and start tackling some of those risks. But I enjoy right now waking up and solving one thing, insurance underwriting, and that's the task. And, that's where we're going to continue to focus.
Absolutely. I really feel like it's going to be an interesting, it's already an interesting time. You mentioned, Claude, and I burned through some enterprise tokens the other day, and they said, "What are you doing?" So I had to answer for that. And I knew I would have to. I knew when it was happening, and it gave me the "Hey, you're running through a bunch of data." I was like, I'm going to have to answer for this.
Yeah.
But I kept going through. I was like, we're almost done. We're going to get through this, So what is the landscape for looking around that corner? I think that, if you solve underwriting, do you try to step into the world that I'm from, the claims world? Do you step into the claims world and say, hey, Sixfold might think that they can do claims better? I would love for someone to do claims better. I would love for someone to do claims like you're talking about doing underwriting, where take it all and put it in one spot for me and give me your opinion and tell me what you think. But ultimately, there's a lot of stuff in claims that you could probably kind of sign off on without a human, but there's always going to be that percentage, that 40, that 20, that whatever that percentage is, that the human's going to need to look at. Have you guys ever, I know that you're underwriting, you're focused, but are you going to help me out? That's my question. When you come into my world, when are you going to help me out?
We get pulled in and requested to go into your world every day. We're there in a couple of places, in a few places. So one very obvious place that we ran to, we were pulled into it, is disability claims, because, disability policy claims, because disability claims is underwriting. You have to look at what's someone's injury and how injured are they, and is this covered under the policy, and can they still do their job? So it was an obvious very first place to go. We also got pulled into, which people saw our end grid and they're like, wow, you can underwrite this for me, is missed claims subrogation opportunities. I know this doesn't sound so exciting, but the idea is this. Today, most companies, they audit and they QA 1% to 5% of their claims. Think about big global businesses with claims around the world. And they are leaving so much money on the table with subrogation opportunities to go to other insurers, or, you got a flood in your home after a plumber was there, but your policy covers it, but it should actually be the GL policy for the plumber. People are using our underwriting AI to look at their claims files to actually evaluate them and say, hey, you missed a subrogation opportunity. So we're getting there, David. And we're just going to keep R&Ding into the more interesting use cases where we think our risk analysis can really help in the biggest way.
I have to ask the question, where does the name come from?
Like most things in life, your family's involved behind the scenes. Started the company, like I said, end of 22, beginning of 23, and looking for a name, searching around, trying to figure out, of course, it has to be available with a .ai, which back then was the only obvious choice. And I'm talking to my wife and she's like, well, what are you guys going to do? I said, well, we're going to find patterns. We're going to use LLMs, generative AI, but eventually agentic AI, to find patterns. Patterns. Our daughter, Nina, in her class today, she told me she learned about one of the most interesting patterns in the world. It's called the Sixfold pattern, which is a snowflake. That's an example. And there's other examples of sixfold symmetry, beautiful patterns that have all this intricacy, yet they're mathematically beautiful, but they're also visually stunning. And that was it. Sixfold.ai was available. So pattern matching, Sixfold, and we committed, $100 later for the domain, and we're in.
You have a history of unusual names and like Unquark. How do you get from Unquark to Sixfold? And I'm not talking about the name, I'm talking about the business. I'm sure it's not all coincidence or by chance.
Yeah, Unquark was so formative for me in so many ways, and just being another startup. I was part of the founding team, launching a technology that was completely new for anyone who was unfamiliar. Uncork was really the first enterprise no-code platform. So our whole dick was visually with drag and drop, but you can do what used to take developers, coders, thousands of hours to create. And we started in the insurance industry, Rob. So our first set of customers were life insurers. Then we moved into P&C. Then we moved into banking and wealth management. Uncork's primary focus was in regulated financial industries, eventually government, a couple of other adjacencies there. And it's where I continued to hone a lot of my insurance background experience and also learn the pain of underwriters. So I could see some pretty straight dot connections between the kinds of things that I learned there and then eventually what became, the problems we're solving here.
You're an interesting guy. That's it.
What is your favorite part about insurance?
What I love about insurance is how much of the global economy, how much of our personal lives, how much of our enjoyment, how much of everything we do would not exist without the 7% backstop that is the $7 trillion of insurance premium that's sold around the globe. If you think about this, if you take $100 trillion economy, and that economy is everything we buy and everything we do and every movie you go to and every car you own and every trip you go on and every business risk you take, $93 trillion of all the things we're doing is only made possible because there's a whole industry that's willing to backstop you for $7 trillion and pay for your car accident and pay for a casualty event. And I'm a true believer that this product needs to exist. Is it too big? Is it too small? I don't know. Other people can say, do we have too much insurance or too little insurance? But what I do know is we're able to have the enjoyment in our lives because this kind of product exists. And so I'm a pure believer that it's going to exist. And that's why we do what we do. If I can help underwrite the policy better and get you as a customer better coverage, then I feel like I'm doing my job.
Yeah. And I think that's the part that I'll say the common man, for lack of a better term, they don't understand that. They don't see that folks in industry and folks in product and folks in all these different aspects of enterprise that help fill their lives with things wouldn't exist without that security blanket that you're talking about. And sometimes I wish that we talked about that more. So I think that's an excellent reason to love insurance. I think that's great.
It makes the world go round. I want to ask you one last question before we go. And that is because I'm sure when you're at a party somewhere and somebody says, "Oh, what do you do?" You say, "Well, I'm an entrepreneur." Is that how you describe yourself? I mean,
yeah, it's a word. Maybe sometimes it makes it into the lexicon. Maybe your wife standing next to you at that party would say that. I say I do insurance things. I was at a party the other day, just this past weekend. The guy asked, I'm standing with my wife, someone else is standing with their partner. The guy asked me, "What do you do?" "Oh, I'm in insurance and insurance technology." And the woman standing right there looks at me and says, "Wait, I'm in insurance technology." And that never happens. So, I love it when those small world situations happen.
Cool. Yeah. That's cool. So you've run different organizations, different companies. I mean, you're CEO here. This is an AI startup. This is a .ai company. This is as they say, I love this phrase, native AI. Is it different to run a native AI company? It's like the daily business of running a company.
Yeah, Rob. And there's two ways that it's so different. I've been doing software my whole life, whole life and then whole career. So one way it's so different is it's a foundation that we're building on right now is not set. Usually you build a software company, you build with the current technology, you got a few years of runway before you start having innovator's dilemma. You could go for 7 years. Everything is not static, but somewhat more stable. But now we're building an AI company and I've had to rebuild my platform 5 times because what I created day one is now obsolete. So that's the very product changes. But here's the other thing. Inside a truly native AI company, you have to act as AI pilled as possible. I mean, my guys don't code anymore. They use coding agents and they direct them to code, just like we'd expect an underwriter to. my marketing team is so lean, but so powerful, so on point, and so amazing because they've got all these skills that help them do everything. You cannot run a modern business unless you want to just spend stupid money and overhire. And you can't be as productive and fun as you want to be unless you're using AI inside. And so it's a fun world. It's a crazy world. No one knows exactly how to navigate it, but every day is another experiment.
We wish you all the best. And we are so excited that we had the opportunity to get a great introduction, a robust introduction to your company and what you're up to, and to you. You're an interesting character in our crazy world. And I'm old enough to know and to remember, and you may be too, that for a long time, insurance was like the most boring thing, right?
Yeah.
Like you would go to that same party and you would say, yeah, I'm in insurance. And then everybody would slowly walk away from you, right? But not anymore.
No, now we're the cool kids. All of a sudden, we're the cool kids.
Now we're the cool kids. And thanks for being a cool kid on our podcast.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, David. I had a really good time.
Thanks, Alex.
You know, I'll say this. After an episode like that, I think to myself, how fortunate are we and how grateful I am that we get to do this podcast and meet people like Alex.
Alex was amazing, exceptionally interesting. He was well-spoken, gave us some really interesting insights as to not just Sixfold, but also a little bit about his past and what the future might even look like in the world of AI underwriting agents and AI in general.
Yep. I mean, if you wanted an InsureTech founder who knows what's happening, you got it right there. Yeah. Big thanks to Alex and his team for making available for our podcast today. Thanks to our production team. Thanks to Lee Boyd, because we're so glad he wasn't here. And thanks to you, as always, for listening to our silly little podcast. And until next time, we'll say goodbye, everybody.
The FNO InsureTech Podcast is produced by Alacrity Solutions. Thanks for listening.